What's going on, guys? Wise Grayscale here, and today I'm going to be telling you everything I think is wrong with Town of Salem 2. First, let's start with some history. On December 15, 2014, a game studio known as Blank Media Games released a heavily strategic social deduction game that we know and love as Town of Salem 1. The game was inspired by popular games known as Mafia or Werewolf, but Town of Salem 1 had its own twist to it. In TOS Classic, there are two factions, Town and Mafia. There are also a handful of neutral roles such as Executioner or Witch. On June 6, 2017, Blank Media Games released a paid DLC called the Coven DLC. This added tons of new roles and a new faction called the Coven to the game. For the last 5 years, there hasn't been more than small updates made to the original game. Blank Media Games attempted to release spin-off games since then, but none have ever had the success they imagined. However, all that changed on April 21st, 2023. Blank Media announced the official sequel to Town of Salem, which in hand was Town of Salem 2. Town of Salem 2 was released into early access on May 26th. I, being an avid Town of Salem player, downloaded it and began playing almost immediately. My first game, I was an arsonist. At this point, plenty of players already knew multiple mechanics and metas of the game due to a popular YouTuber known as Pipetron. I had attempted to watch some of his videos, but I didn't understand much and figured I would learn through gameplay. I was terribly wrong. I died on day 3 as an arsonist on my first game. The strategies and roles from Town of Salem 1 were changed so drastically I barely recognized the game as a sequel. I tried to play a few more rounds, but I couldn't seem to learn or understand anything. I wasn't ready to give up on it quite yet, so I went back to Pipetron's videos and I did begin to understand some of the new ways to play. However, I still wasn't the biggest fan and preferred TOS 1. After thinking about it and playing more games, I definitely don't like Town of Salem 2, and here's why. Number 1. No More Mafia. The whole basis of Town of Salem 1 was built off the conflicting dynamic between the town and the Mafia. The town's sole goal was to eliminate the Mafia and the Witch, and the goal of the Mafia was to eliminate the town and work with the Witch. Once the Coven DLC was introduced, it added tons of new roles and surprise elements to the game. This made playing around that much more interesting. On one hand, the Mafia and Coven don't win together, so they would want to eliminate each other. But on the other hand, if they eliminate the other faction, then the town focuses solely on their faction, and it added an interesting balance. In Town of Salem 2, the two main factions are Town and Coven. I understand that there is a new, third faction known as Neutral Apocalypse. My problem with that is, it is very overpowered if more than one are in the game. What Town of Salem players have been begging for years is more roles. Town of Salem 2 certainly adds more roles, but it also removes some. Some players believe and hope for a Mafia DLC, like we got with the Coven in Town of Salem 1. As much as I would like that and might even play the game, I don't think it will ever happen. So many of the roles in Town of Salem from the Mafia have been slightly adjusted and renamed to Coven roles in TOS 2. This brings me to number 2 on my list, role adjustments. Plenty of players, including myself, struggle with identifying old TOS 1 rules that went through name change in Town of Salem 2. For example, the Doctor from Town of Salem 1 is now known as the Cleric. The only difference between the two roles is that a cleric can heal a mare from poison and protect against dreamweaving. Part of what I love about Town of Salem 1 is the unique and complex strategies that play into each other on a level that is hard to understand. Like the Veteran, for example. There are very few unique town roles, and the Veteran is one of them. It's a difficult balance between claiming or counterclaiming as the Veteran, because then evils know your identity and you are less likely to kill them at night. It also made it a more difficult role to fake claim as it was unique, so only one of them can exist. In Town of Salem 2, however, veterans are not unique and they can also be rollblock. I feel like this just removes an aspect of the well-balanced complexity from Town of Salem 1. And that brings me to my next topic, a dying Town of Salem 1. Before TOS 2, you could get into a game of Coven All Any within seconds of joining a lobby. After it was released, the time waiting between each game grew and grew until it's pretty much just the same few hundred people playing. Most recently, I have waited 5 to 10 minutes just for a game to start, and the game used to be full of players with actual strategies and wills to play the game. Now, it seems like very few people actually try in the game, and it's hard to get into a good lobby. I will admit, it was hard to find good lobbies before TOS 2 was even announced, but it seems as if it's getting worse and worse by the day. Maybe it's the fact that you have to wait so long between games, or maybe it's just a lack of good players. Either way, TOS 2 didn't help with the fact, and more players are continuing to leave. Now, I haven't played TOS 2 in a while, but I've heard that a similar thing is happening over there. I've heard that it's hard to get into a lobby of anything that isn't all any or ranked. Number 4, Town Heavy Town of Salem 2. Now, I didn't make graphics for this one, so have a picture of a cat. I feel like Town of Salem 2 is actually super town heavy. They've added so many new town roles, taken neutral roles and made them town roles, and there's not a lot of evils to balance them out. A lot of the roles are super overpowered too. Most recently, they've added the Socialite and the Marshal, which are really strong town roles. I believe it's hard to find a balanced game in Town of Salem 2 recently, and that's another reason why I don't like it. All in all, I am glad that the franchise has been somewhat revived, because I do appreciate the game, and I hope these imbalances in the new Town of Salem get patched one day, and maybe I'll be able to enjoy the game like the rest of the community. Anyway, that's it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all next week. Goodbye.